They call it a reunion, but let's be honest, this isn't tea with family, it's trench warfare with crowns. The air over Britain feels heavy whenever the word reconciliation is whispered in connection with Prince Harry. Once the nation's most beloved royal, the soldier prince who walked behind his mother's coffin and later fought in Afghanistan, Harry now returns to London like an unwelcome ghost. His visits are rare, fleeting, and shrouded in speculation. This time is no different. He has flown 5,500 miles across the Atlantic, a son returning to his homeland, but the question is not whether crowds will greet him or whether cameras will capture his every move. The question is whether King Charles will dare to see him at all. For outsiders, the answer seems obvious. This is, after all, a father and son. The king is a man fighting cancer, frailer than ever, and Harry is his youngest child, estranged but still blood. Shouldn't the two sit down, even briefly, for the sake of family? Royal journalist Victoria Murphy described it poignantly. On a personal level, that feels quite sad. We're ultimately talking about a father and son. Yet sadness and sentimentality are poor guides for the House of Windsor. The monarchy runs not on emotion but on calculation, optics, and the cold mathematics of power. And the calculations are grim. As former royal correspondent Charles Ray put it bluntly, they've been at daggers drawn. Those 3 words cut to the core. This is not a minor family dispute. This is a war of trust, betrayal, and reputation. And every move the king makes, whether to open the gates of Balmoral or keep them locked, carries consequences. The geography itself tells a story. Harry arrives in London, alone, stripped of his wife and children. Charles, meanwhile, remains in Scotland, retreating at Balmoral Castle, hundreds of miles away. To see his son would mean either breaking the rhythm of his convalescence and engagements to travel south, or requiring Harry to fly north into the royal fortress. Neither scenario is simple, and even if the logistics are solved, the deeper questions remain. Can a father and son who have turned each other into global headlines truly sit in a room together without it becoming tomorrow's Netflix monologue? This is the tragic theater of the Windsors. What should be private heartbreak becomes public spectacle, and every gesture is interpreted as strategy. To meet Harry now is not just to share tea, it is to gamble with the monarchy's credibility. To refuse him is not just to stay silent, it is to risk appearing petty and cruel. Daggers drawn indeed. If King Charles weighs the risks of meeting Harry, he cannot do so in a vacuum. Standing just outside the door, as silent as he is powerful, is Prince William. He is not only the heir to the throne, but the son who has remained steadfastly loyal, dutiful, and aligned with his father's vision. To betray William's trust for the sake of reconciliation with Harry would be to undermine the very foundation of continuity the monarchy depends on. As Charles Ray reminded viewers, with the greatest respect, the first person the king will be speaking to is William. There's no question about that. And therein lies the problem. William has made it brutally clear that he is not interested in reconciliation. According to every report from courtiers, every whisper from palace corridors, the elder prince has drawn a red line. The brother who once protected Harry from paparazzi photographers in Eden's corridors now sees him as a liability. The reasons are manifold. Trust is shattered. Harry has published intimate details of their rows, even describing in his memoir Spare how William allegedly shoved him during a heated confrontation over Meghan. Harry also recounted how William warned him the relationship was moving too fast, only to be ignored. The book painted William as a bully, cold and harsh, while Harry cast himself as the wounded younger sibling. For William, such portrayals were not just hurtful, they were unforgivable. William will never forgive, said one palace aide to the Sunday Times. Not after Spare, not after Oprah, not after the Netflix series. Too much has been said, too much has been sold. Indeed, William's sense of betrayal cuts deeper than protocol. It is personal. He watched his wife Catherine dragged into the spotlight during Meghan's interviews. He watched his private conversations with Harry turned into American soundbites. For William, reconciliation is not merely unlikely, it is undesirable. And Charles knows this. If he meets Harry, he risks alienating William. Imagine the optics. Charles bending to see the prodigal son while the loyal heir stands ignored. It is not simply family politics, it is monarchical suicide. William represents the future. Harry represents the past. The king cannot appear to choose the past at the expense of the future. Commentary here turns almost Shakespearean. The monarch is torn between two sons, one dutiful, one rebellious. To embrace the rebel is to wound the heir. To side with the heir is to forsake the younger son forever. But Charles's choice is not really a choice. As commentator Victoria Murphy admitted, the William factor is incredibly important in this setup. Push William aside and just say, well, he's never going to meet Harry. But he's incredibly important. The heir's shadow looms large. The public, too, reflects this divide. Polling consistently shows William and Catherine near the top of royal approval ratings, while Harry and Meghan sink to the bottom. To defy William's stance would not only anger the heir, it would anger the people who already see Harry as a liability. And yet, there is tragedy in this calculus. Beneath the titles and the polling data, beneath the daggers and the divisions, lies a simple truth. These are brothers. They were once inseparable, bonded by trauma, united by the image of two boys walking behind their mother's coffin. That bond is shattered now, and the king must decide whether to pick at the shards. But the William factor does not stand alone. If William is the immovable object, Meghan Markle is the irresistible force. For reconciliation to mean anything, the woman once branded, the difficult Duchess, cannot be ignored. And her absence or her presence makes the king's gamble even deadlier. If William is the immovable obstacle in the path of reconciliation, Meghan Markle is the explosive charge that makes the path nearly impassable. For all the talk of father and son, for all the wistful sighs about Charles and Harry finally sitting in the same room, no one serious believes the breach can be healed without addressing the Meghan problem. As Charles Ray put it with brutal clarity, this woman will never set foot back in this country again. Her relationship with Britain is destroyed. That declaration is not hyperbole. Meghan's standing in Britain has plummeted since the glittering days of her engagement, when newspapers called her a breath of fresh air. Polls in 2024 and 2025 show her consistently at the bottom of royal favorability, behind even Prince Andrew, a man disgraced by association with Jeffrey Epstein. The symbolism is staggering. The public would rather forgive a man linked to scandalous friends than a woman who told Oprah she was silenced by the monarchy. To understand why Meghan is seen as the dealbreaker, one must revisit the public record she and Harry have left behind. The Oprah interview in 2021 was seismic. Meghan told the world, "I just didn't want to be alive anymore," and alleged that unnamed members of the royal family questioned how dark her baby's skin might be. The revelations shocked America and triggered an avalanche of coverage about institutional racism. But in Britain, the backlash was swift. Commentators called the couple disloyal, selfish, and opportunistic. For monarchists, it was the ultimate betrayal, airing family secrets to a global audience, shredding the monarchy's mystique for ratings. Then came the Netflix docuseries. 6 hours of polished footage, curated images, and contradictions. Meghan tearfully recounted palace slights, Harry accused his brother of screaming at him, and together they depicted life behind the palace gates as a nightmare. But the series was not just about telling their story. It was about rewriting it. In their 2017 engagement interview, Meghan claimed their first meeting had been a blind date arranged by a friend. In Netflix's version, they confessed to FaceTiming beforehand. A small contradiction, perhaps, but for critics it was proof that their narrative shifted whenever convenient. The memoir Spare added fuel. Though Harry's name was on the cover, Meghan's presence haunted the pages. Harry admitted that his wife compared her treatment to Diana's persecution. He cast her as the one who gave him purpose. "She saved me," he wrote. Yet the book also painted Meghan as the wedge between brothers, the lightning rod for family collapse. For royal watchers, it confirmed what they suspected. Reconciliation without Meghan is theater. Reconciliation with Meghan is impossible. Victoria Murphy put it in measured terms. You can't just have Harry reconciling with the royal family. You've got to have Meghan and Harry reconciling. This is the core dilemma. The king may wish to see his son. He may even crave it, as any father would. But unless Meghan is included, the gesture is hollow. And Meghan, by every indication, is not coming back. Indeed, her absence is itself a statement. Harry has said publicly that it is not safe for Meghan to return to the UK. In May, he told an interviewer that Britain was no longer secure enough for his wife and children. Charles Ray dismissed this line as nonsense. With the greatest respect, that is an absolute load of old tosh. This is a much safer country than the one he's living in at the moment. The bluntness reflects the deep suspicion in Britain that Harry is using security as a pretext, shielding Meghan from the humiliation of facing a nation that has turned against her. From Meghan's perspective, of course, the calculation is obvious. Why return to a country that jeered her every move, turned her fashion choices into tabloid fodder, and branded her Duchess difficult? Why step back into a role where she would forever be compared to Catherine, polished and popular, when Meghan's very existence seems to threaten the palace hierarchy? In California, she can be her own woman, curating Instagram posts of Archie and Lilibet, faces hidden behind emojis or turned away, launching Netflix shows about cooking and lifestyle, selling high-priced jam to an audience that may laugh but still buys. In Britain, she is a villain. The irony, of course, is that the monarchy cannot ignore her. If Charles were to meet Harry without acknowledging Meghan, the absence would scream louder than her presence. Questions would pour in. Did the king ask about his daughter-in-law? About Archie and Lilibet? Will he ever see his American grandchildren? As Charles Ray noted, that is still a thorn. You cannot have a reconciliation with just Harry alone. And yet, imagine the optics if Meghan did return. The tabloids would ignite. Every gesture, every sideways glance, every outfit would be dissected. Catherine's frosty smile would be replayed in slow motion, as it was during Queen Elizabeth II's funeral when she stood near Meghan with visible tension. William would bristle, the public would sneer, and the king would look like a monarch capitulating to the very couple who profited from tearing down the institution. This is the Meghan paradox. She is both indispensable and intolerable. Without her, reconciliation is meaningless. With her, reconciliation is unworkable. She is the ultimate factor in the king's dilemma, not because she holds official power, but because she holds emotional and symbolic power. She embodies the fracture that cannot be healed. Drama commentary sharpens the point. Meghan is the ghost at every banquet, the shadow at every meeting. Even in absence, she dominates. Her Instagram posts of blurred children spark debates about privacy. Her Netflix ventures, derided for low ratings, still command headlines. Critics may mock her pasta recipes and jam jars, but they cannot look away. And that, more than anything, is why the palace fears her. The monarchy thrives on control, on shaping narratives. Meghan refuses to play by those rules. So when observers say, this is just a father and son, they miss the truth. It is never just father and son. It is father, son, heir, and the woman in California who has made reconciliation both impossible and essential. And this is where the king's dagger truly trembles. He may wish to embrace Harry, but by doing so, he inevitably embraces Meghan whether she sets foot in Britain or not. As one royal insider once sighed to the Telegraph, you can't have Harry without Meghan. And you can't have Meghan without trouble. Which means the king is left with no good options. To meet Harry risks opening the Meghan wound once more. To refuse him risks looking like a father who has abandoned his child. And either way, the world is watching. Even if William were suddenly to soften, even if Meghan miraculously appeared at Windsor in a mood of serenity and forgiveness, there would still remain a poison at the heart of the family's dilemma: trust. Without trust, reconciliation is theater. Without trust, every meeting becomes a liability. And in the case of Harry and the royal family, trust has been not just strained but obliterated. Charles Ray voiced the problem with the bluntness of a man who has watched the palace dance for decades. Are you going to have Harry in a room and talk to him about a variety of things, and then watch the news bulletins from America where it's all been revealed? That line captures the Windsor nightmare. For centuries, the monarchy has lived by discretion. What was said in drawing rooms stayed in drawing rooms. What was whispered in Balmoral remained within stone walls. Harry broke that covenant. He not only carried conversations out of those rooms, he published them in books, broadcast them on television, and dramatized them on streaming platforms. The litany is long. In Oprah's Garden, Harry recounted family conversations about race and security. In Netflix's docuseries, he described private arguments, including William screaming at him during a Sandringham summit. In Spare, he quoted his father pleading, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." That plea, once spoken in desperation by a father to his sons, now belongs to millions of readers. How can Charles ever speak candidly to Harry again, knowing that his words may end up as paperback fodder? And the distrust flows both ways. Harry has spoken openly about his paranoia that palace aides leak stories to the press, sometimes with the tacit approval of senior royals. In interviews promoting Spare, he accused the institution of trading in secrets. There's a revolving door between the palace and the press. They brief against you. They feed the beast. For Harry, the breach of trust is not personal, it is systemic. He believes the firm itself is designed to sacrifice individuals for the survival of the crown. And once that belief is entrenched, how does one ever sit down at Balmoral without seeing spies behind every curtain? This is the paradox of the Sussex saga. Both sides claim betrayal. Both sides say the other cannot be trusted. And both are correct. The monarchy cannot trust Harry not to monetize every confidence. Harry cannot trust the monarchy not to weaponize every leak. Between them lies a chasm wide enough to swallow reconciliation whole. Even Harry's tone has shifted over time. In January 2023, promoting Spare, he sounded defiant. "I don't know how staying silent ever makes things better." He demanded apologies, accountability, structural change. But by May 2024, his words were softer. Victoria Murphy noted the difference. When he gave his interview in May, to me, it was just like a completely different tone. It felt so much more emotional. It didn't feel like any idea that there were conditions attached. This tonal shift suggests a man weary of war, perhaps willing to sell for less. Yet even if Harry is ready to lower his demands, the trust deficit remains. Commentary sharpens the dilemma. Imagine Charles, frail from treatment, sitting across from his son. The cameras may be absent, the aides dismissed, but the silence between them will carry centuries of protocol and years of betrayal. What can Charles say? How are the children? Risks becoming the next chapter in a memoir. How's Meghan? Risks becoming a soundbite on American morning television. Even a simple question about Harry's well-being could be weaponized, interpreted as coldness if omitted, as hypocrisy if included. And Harry knows it. His entire narrative is built on exposure. His memoir thrives on anecdote. His interviews trade in intimate detail. To suddenly stop would be to betray his own brand. The paradox deepens. Harry needs material to remain relevant, but every revelation further corrodes the very relationships he claims to seek. He feeds his story by starving his trust. The monarchy, meanwhile, lives by opacity. Its survival depends on mystery. When Queen Elizabeth II was asked by a biographer why she never revealed her private feelings, she replied simply, "I must be seen to be believed." Not heard, not exposed, seen. The Sussex approach, seen, heard, monetized, and packaged, represents the antithesis of that ethos. For Charles, to meet Harry is to step into Meghan's world of exposure, where every family exchange is potential content. For Harry, to meet Charles is to risk silence, to be swallowed back into the institutional void he has spent years escaping. That is why aides describe the prospect of a meeting as both desirable and terrifying. Desirable, because the image of father and son would suggest healing. Terrifying, because the image might be the only thing that heals, while the words spoken could deepen the wound. As one unnamed courtier confided to The Times, "You want the photograph, not the transcript." Yet in this brutal arithmetic of trust, even the photograph is risky. If Harry emerges smiling from Clarence House, critics will say the king capitulated. If he emerges scowling, the tabloids will scream failure. If he emerges at all, Meghan's absence will be louder than his presence. Trust, optics, calculation, it is an impossible trinity. Drama commentary underscores the futility. This is not about reconciliation. It is about risk management. Charles fears betrayal. Harry fears silencing. Meghan fears humiliation. William fears exposure. In such a landscape, trust is not just broken, it is radioactive. And so the daggers remain drawn, not just in the wounds of family conflict but in the very fabric of their words. Words, once spoken in confidence, now belong to the public. Words, once meant to heal, now sharpen the blades. Trust has become both weapon and casualty. Which brings us to the next layer of this saga, the public itself. For if the family cannot trust one another, how can they trust the people who watch, judge, and vote with their affections? And how do polls, headlines, and public opinion twist the knife further into this already bleeding wound? If trust is broken inside the family, it is shattered outside it. For the monarchy, the court of public opinion is as consequential as the corridors of Balmoral. The crown survives not by law alone, but by love, by the fragile, unpredictable goodwill of the people. And in the case of Harry and Meghan, that goodwill has curdled into fatigue, frustration, and outright rejection. When The Sun asked its readers whether King Charles should meet Harry during his return to Britain, the results were devastating. Only 8% said yes. Another 19% said, maybe if Harry makes more effort first. But a thundering 73% said no. 3 out of 4 people polled believed father and son should not even sit in the same room. The numbers shocked the panelists themselves. I'm surprised by that, admitted Victoria Murphy. But it reflects what we see in polling more broadly. Indeed, the polls tell a grim story. As of 2024, surveys by YouGov consistently place William and Catherine near the top of royal favorability rankings, with approval ratings hovering around 70%. King Charles, despite his illness and the turbulence of succession, has remained stable, unchanged in popularity for a decade. But Harry and Meghan? Their numbers have collapsed. In 2017, Harry was among the most beloved royals, scoring higher even than the Queen in some polls. By 2024, he was languishing near the bottom, with favorability in Britain sinking below 30%. Meghan fared worse, often trailing only Prince Andrew as the least liked member of the family. The turnaround is staggering. 5 years ago, Harry was Britain's golden boy, the cheeky prince who admitted to mistakes but redeemed himself through military service and charity work. Now he is the prodigal son, portrayed as a liability. Meghan, once hailed as a modernizing force, is dismissed as a disruptive opportunist. The shift is not just in numbers but in mood. As one journalist put it, 5 years ago, people thought we were being too harsh on Harry. Now they're just tired of him. The weariness matters. Monarchy is a performance, and its audience must be willing to suspend disbelief. If the public no longer cares for the show, the crown cannot command its magic. And when 3/4 of respondents say the king should not meet his son, the message is unmistakable. Reconciliation may warm hearts in California, but in Britain it chills the blood. Drama commentary sharpens the irony. Harry once thrived on public sympathy, the boy who walked behind Diana's coffin, the soldier who risked his life in Afghanistan. His trauma was shared, his vulnerability embraced. But sympathy has an expiration date, especially when repackaged and resold through memoirs, interviews, and docuseries. Spare may have sold millions, but for many Britons it confirmed what they suspected. Harry had weaponized his pain. Meghan, too, once symbolized hope, a biracial duchess, an American actress, a symbol of modernity. But every new venture, from podcast contracts to jam jars, reinforced the suspicion that privacy was never the goal. Control was. As Charles Ray said on air, the people I meet don't think Harry should ever come back. I haven't come across anyone who thinks he should be welcomed back into the family. The anecdotal lines up with the statistical. Public opinion has hardened into a wall. And when walls rise around Windsor, kings take notice. Charles knows he cannot afford to alienate William. But he also cannot afford to alienate the electorate of affection that sustains the monarchy itself. There is another layer here. Public rejection is not just emotional, it is generational. Younger Britons, according to polls, are more sympathetic to Harry and Meghan, more skeptical of the monarchy as a whole. Older Britons, however, remain fiercely loyal to William, Catherine, and the institution. For Charles, the dilemma sharpens. If he meets Harry, he risks angering his core constituency, the older voters who still treasure the monarchy's continuity. If he refuses, he risks looking cold to the younger generations already drifting toward republicanism. Either choice carries consequences. Commentary becomes almost cruel. Harry and Meghan claim they want to shape their own narrative, but they have lost control of the only narrative that matters, the one written in public sentiment. Meghan's Netflix series With Love, Meghan may trend on social media for a day, but polls show Britons are not watching, not caring, not forgiving. Harry's heartfelt speeches about his mother or veterans may tug at heartstrings in America, but in Britain they are drowned out by the weariness of scandal fatigue. The audience has decided. And this audience is not silent. Polls become headlines. Headlines become perceptions. Perceptions shape palace strategy. Every percentage point in YouGov's charts is weighed in Clarence House. Every data point in Ipsos Mori is a whisper in the king's ear. When 73% say, "Do not meet Harry," it is not just an opinion. It is a command. Victoria Murphy offered a softer interpretation. "I think there is a mood towards wanting some kind of reconciliation. But it's not showing up in the polls." Perhaps she is right. Perhaps beneath the numbers lies a private longing for a father to embrace his son. But monarchy is not private. It cannot act on whispers. It acts on optics. And the optics are merciless. The tragedy, of course, is that Harry may need reconciliation more than Charles does. His polling freefall suggests a man cut adrift from the nation that once adored him. For him, a handshake with the king would be more than filial warmth, it would be political capital, a lifeline back into British acceptance. As one commentator suggested, maybe Harry needs reconciliation to boost these figures. Maybe he needs to be closer to the king if he wants to be a little more popular. But Charles does not govern for Harry's numbers. He governs for his own survival, and for the survival of the heir waiting beside him. The people have spoken, and the people have turned. Which brings us to the cruelest calculation of all. Even if Charles wished to embrace his son, even if Harry begged for nothing more than a cup of tea, the polls have made reconciliation itself a risk. Public mood has become public verdict, and the verdict is guilty. The question now is not whether Charles and Harry can trust each other. It is whether the monarchy can trust the public to forgive them if they do. And that is why the calculus grows darker still. For in this family, forgiveness is no longer just a virtue. It is a liability. And as the public mood hardens, the spotlight swivels back to Meghan's California stage, where blurred photographs of Archie and Lilibet, faltering Netflix projects, and jam jars become both weapon and shield. Which leads us to the California interlude, the Meghan show that keeps the brand alive even as Britain turns away. While the British public hardens its stance against reconciliation, Meghan Markle has been busy staging her own interlude thousands of miles away, in the sun-drenched neighborhoods of Montecito. If Britain has closed its doors, California has opened a new stage complete with Instagram posts, Netflix specials, and glossy lifestyle branding. This is not reconciliation. This is reinvention. But reinvention is a performance with mixed reviews. Meghan's latest venture, her Netflix series With Love, Meghan, was meant to be the centerpiece of the Sussexes' multi-million-dollar streaming deal. It promised a softer side of the Duchess, cooking in chic kitchens, sharing anecdotes, sprinkling positivity like rose petals over pasta. Yet for all the hype, the numbers told a bleaker story. As one commentator dryly noted on air, never has there been someone written about so much, or a show covered so heavily, and yet watched so little. Unofficial rankings placed With Love, Meghan 134th globally on Netflix, and 48th in the reality category. For a woman once hailed as the crown jewel of Netflix's royal content strategy, it was a downgrade. Even the Sun's royal podcast panel struggled to muster enthusiasm. One guest admitted, "I thought it was just okay. I didn't mind the show." But clearly the public doesn't agree. And yet Meghan shrugged. Asked about the criticism, she smiled and replied, "They're criticizing me while I'm just making a skillet pasta." That nonchalance is both her armor and her liability. To supporters, it proves she is unbothered, at peace with her choices. To critics, it reeks of detachment, a duchess turned lifestyle guru dismissing legitimate concerns about dwindling relevance with a recipe. The contradictions are striking. Meghan famously told Oprah she had been silenced in the royal family. She lamented the inability to use her voice. And yet, with full freedom in California, her chosen voice speaks not of politics, activism, or the struggles she once highlighted, but of recipes, flower arrangements, and lifestyle branding. As one commentator quipped, she wanted to speak. Now she speaks about petals. Even her social media reflects the ambivalence. After years of silence, Meghan returned to Instagram in 2024. But her posts have been inconsistent, a patchwork of professional glamour shots, behind-the-scenes clips, and family glimpses. The most controversial, of course, involve Archie and Lilibet. Their faces never shown, their profiles blurred or hidden behind emojis. Critics see hypocrisy. It's pointless having them on the screen with little gray hearts cut out, one journalist complained. Supporters see parental prudence, insisting Meghan is modeling modern digital boundaries. This obsession with control is the through line of Meghan's California era. From Netflix to Instagram to her lifestyle brand, she seeks to curate the narrative on her terms. No intrusive tabloid photographs, no palace aides dictating wardrobe or speech. Every shot is intentional, every reveal is partial, and yet, as critics never tire of pointing out, the irony is glaring. The couple who demanded privacy now monetize curated glimpses of the very life they claim to protect. Charles Ray cut through the spin with characteristic bluntness. They wanted privacy? No, they wanted control. And that, in many ways, is the essence of Meghan's interlude. Control of brand, control of image, control of narrative. But control is expensive. Netflix is a business, not a therapy session. Contracts worth $100 million demand results, not controversies. And when ratings lag, patience thins. As Charles Ray observed, Netflix is a big company. It wants success. I don't think this helps their success. There has to come a time when they ask, is this worth it? The irony sharpens. Meghan has never been more free to speak, and yet what she says risks irrelevance. The Duchess who once electrified global headlines with accusations of racism now faces headlines about jam jars, affiliate marketing mishaps, and an online storefront that quietly disappeared after only months. The Duchess who once symbolized modernity now produces content critics deride as inoffensive filler. Even sympathetic analysts wonder aloud, can she sustain? That's the question. How long before the brand collapses? And yet, Meghan's power remains undeniable. Even when mocked, she commands attention. The British press still cover her Instagram posts with the intensity of a state visit. American outlets debate whether her shift to neutral positivity is a strategic rebrand. Her critics amplify her every move, ensuring she remains unavoidable. In the economy of attention, Meghan still dominates. Drama commentary distills the paradox. Meghan is both overexposed and unseen. She is everywhere, and yet she withholds the very things her children's faces, her raw opinions that the audience craves. She frustrates both fans and foes. But in doing so, she ensures the conversation never ends. This is why the California interlude matters to the Windsor drama. It is not a sideshow. It is the parallel stage on which reconciliation is made impossible. For as long as Meghan runs her brand independently, reconciliation with Britain is irrelevant. She does not need Balmoral when she has Netflix. She does not need the red carpet of Buckingham when she has the green lights of Hollywood. And yet, the cracks are visible. Netflix can only bankroll so many underperforming series. Spotify already pulled the plug, with executive Bill Simmons blasting the Sussexes as effing grifters. Meghan may laugh off criticism, but she cannot laugh off contracts. The question is not whether she can sustain attention. The question is whether she can sustain the business. Meanwhile, in Britain, every new episode, every Instagram post, every curated photograph reinforces the palace's suspicion. Meghan is not just a duchess in exile. She is a duchess in competition. Competing for narrative, competing for attention, competing for relevance. And as long as she competes, reconciliation is not a family affair, it is a PR war. A war the monarchy cannot afford to lose, and one Meghan cannot afford to abandon. Which is why the California interlude is not a break in the saga. It is its mirror, and in that mirror, Charles sees not a daughter-in-law returning to Britain, but a brand too powerful, too controversial, and too uncontrollable to ever be welcomed back. The California sun may warm Meghan's kitchen sets, but in London, her shadow chills every conversation about Harry. And that shadow grows darker when contrasted with another woman at the palace, the Queen Consort, who has quietly built her own narrative of resilience and grit. While Meghan's California experiments chase streaming figures and Instagram engagement, Queen Camilla has been crafting a very different kind of narrative. If Meghan's brand rests on curated glimpses and lifestyle content, Camilla's image is built on grit, pragmatism, and a kind of unexpected candor. She is not selling jam jars or pasta recipes. She is selling resilience. A recent anecdote, unearthed in Valentine Lowe's book and retold in The Sun, captured headlines for its raw simplicity. In the 1960s, as a young woman riding a train, Camilla was accosted by a groper. Rather than retreat in shame, she fought back, whacking him with the heel of her shoe before informing the police. Boris Johnson, who later heard the story from her directly, reportedly passed it on to aides, who passed it on again. Some questioned why it was printed at all, given Britain's legal protections for victims of sexual assault. But the point was clear. Camilla wanted the anecdote out, not as trauma, but as testament. As Charles Ray observed, she's a very gutsy lady. That toughness has come to define her public role. What might have been whispered as scandal, Charles's mistress, the woman once blamed for Diana's misery, has, over decades, been reframed into the profile of a queen who understands suffering and survival. Meghan told Oprah she was silenced. Camilla has shown that she can speak, and not just speak, but speak powerfully about causes that matter. Her work in domestic violence and sexual abuse prevention is no PR gimmick. She has delivered speeches at Buckingham Palace, warning of an epidemic of violence against women. She has sat with survivors, amplifying their stories. After the death of Sarah Everard in 2021, she gave a striking address. Every woman in this room knows what it is like to be threatened, simply walking down the street. We must bring men into this conversation. For a royal consort, often expected to smile benignly and avoid controversy, it was radical. Victoria Murphy noted the shift. At first, she did it because she loved Charles, and she accepted the job. But as she met people, as she heard their stories, she became personally invested. That investment has transformed her reputation. Where once she was derided as the other woman, now she is recognized as a champion of women's voices. Drama commentary makes the contrast sharper. Meghan, once eager to be outspoken, now presents herself through lifestyle branding, cautious and neutral, afraid of alienating audiences. Camilla, once dismissed as a silent shadow, has emerged as a queen unafraid to wade into sensitive territory. Meghan sells curated glimpses of domesticity. Camilla speaks openly about domestic violence. Meghan monetizes her control of narrative. Camilla legitimizes her voice by surrendering control to causes bigger than herself. The palace understands the value of this contrast. While Meghan's ventures flounder on Netflix charts, Camilla's speeches are covered with respect, even admiration, by the British press. She does not need ratings. She needs resonance, and she has it. This transformation did not come overnight. In the 1990s, Camilla was the target of relentless hostility. Newspapers called her a homewrecker. Crowds jeered at her name. Even after Diana's death, her acceptance into royal life was far from certain. For years, palace aides shielded her, afraid the public would never forgive. And yet, through quiet consistency, she has reshaped her image. Not through glossy interviews or streaming deals, but through persistence and purpose. Charles Ray, who covered her for decades, admitted as much. In the early days, we wrote stories critical of her almost every week. But later, I met her 2 or 3 times. She's a nice lady, good fun, with a sense of humor. It is not glamorous. It is not cinematic, but it is effective. Commentators often juxtapose Meghan's claim of being silenced with Camilla's record. Meghan insisted the firm prevented her from using her voice. Camilla has proven that a royal consort can, in fact, use her voice if she chooses consistency over confrontation, patience over performance. As one panelist on The Sun's show quipped, Camilla has shown you can be vocal, be a woman, and be in the royal family. Drama commentary underscores the irony. Meghan fled the institution because she said it silenced her. Camilla, once an outsider reviled by the public, stayed and in staying, found her voice. One chose exile, the other endurance. One crafted Instagram posts, the other fought with a shoe. The monarchy thrives on contrasts. Where Meghan embodies volatility, Camilla embodies steadiness. Where Meghan generates headlines of scandal, Camilla cultivates headlines of service. It is no accident that palace aides now push her forward as a reliable public face while Charles undergoes treatment. Her role is not just ceremonial, it is compensatory. She is filling the void of trust that Harry and Meghan left behind. And for Charles, the contrast could not be more important. To embrace Harry risks reminding the public of Meghan, of Oprah, of Netflix, of grievance. To appear with Camilla, by contrast, reassures the public of resilience, of stability, of a monarchy that listens without collapsing. In narrative terms, Camilla is the anti-Meghan. Both women entered the royal family from outside. Both faced hostility, but their trajectories diverged. Meghan chose to burn bridges and build brands. Camilla chose to build bridges and burn the old caricatures of her reputation. As Andrew Morton observed in an interview, Camilla is now the monarchy's anchor. She steadies the ship. Without her, Charles would drift. That anchor is what makes Meghan's Hollywood spotlight look like a circus in comparison. The lesson for the monarchy is stark. Silence may once have been golden, but resilience is platinum. Camilla has shown that survival is not about avoiding controversy, but about owning it, reframing it, and outlasting it. Which is why, when Charles weighs whether to meet Harry, he will inevitably think of Camilla not just as his wife, but as the woman who has mastered survival in the same institution Harry fled. Her presence is a reminder that reconciliation is possible, but only if one is willing to endure humiliation, weather storms, and emerge stronger. Meghan chose exile. Camilla chose endurance. And endurance, for now, is winning. And so we arrive at the end of this act, but not the end of the story. Harry has crossed oceans, Charles has retreated to Balmoral, William has drawn his line, Meghan has sharpened her brand, and the public has cast its verdict. After all the speculation, all the polls, all the whispers from courtiers and commentators, the daggers are still drawn. Nothing fundamental has changed. The same barriers remain. William's refusal, Meghan's absence, the collapse of trust, the fortress of Balmoral, the ruthless optics of the media, and the brutal arithmetic of risk. Each factor is a blade, sharpened by years of resentment, polished by every interview and every leak. Together, they form a circle around father and son, daring either to step forward and risk the cut. Charles cannot move without wounding his crown. Harry cannot move without wounding his father. William cannot yield without wounding his pride. Meghan cannot return without wounding her reputation. And so they stand, motionless, in a drama where every option is dangerous. The irony is cruel. This is a family defined by ceremony, yet incapable of performing the simplest ritual of all, a father embracing his son. For centuries, the monarchy has survived by disguising its wounds in pageantry. But this wound refuses to be hidden. It bleeds in polls, in podcasts, in paparazzi shots. It bleeds every time Harry speaks, every time Meghan posts, every time William scowls, every time Charles hesitates. And still, the public waits. Some long for reconciliation, others dread it, but all demand a spectacle. Because in this saga, absence is as dramatic as presence. A meeting would make headlines. A refusal makes headlines too. The monarchy cannot escape the theater. It is the theater. Drama commentary makes the final twist clear. Reconciliation is not a solution. It is another scene. Whether they meet or not, the story will not end. If they meet, critics will demand to know what was said. If they don't, critics will demand to know why. Either way, the daggers stay unsheathed. And so we leave this act where it began, with a father and son, not sitting at the same table, but staring at each other across a chasm of mistrust. A king who cannot risk forgiveness. A prince who cannot risk silence. A family forever divided between crown and blood. They call it reconciliation, but in truth, it is stalemate. And stalemate in Windsor means only one thing: the daggers remain drawn. Right finger subscribe now, because the next act in the royal drama is already being written.